In this episode, I polished some pivots on a lathe and then I checked the pivot bushing holes for alignment. Also, I clean and grease one of the mainsprings. Welcome back to Scotty's Clock World. I upload new clock repair videos on Sunday and Wednesday mornings of every week. The parts have come back from the ultrasonic cleaner. We'll have a quick look at them to see what they look like. Yeah, they're pretty clean, they look alright. You'll notice the discoloration down here and on various other parts of the plates. These clocks, when they were made, the brass was nice and shiny and they were covered with a coat of lacquer to keep them looking shiny. So if you polish them, you'll remove the lacquer and they will tarnish quite quickly and they will stay that way forever, or you'll be forever polishing them. So that's why you leave it like this and it's not a problem. Look at the top plate. Yeah, that come up quite well actually. Yeah, alright. Now take our parts out of the dish, put them down there. Now we can start undoing the pieces of wire that held all the parts together and putting them into the correct location on our foam block. That's the Motion Works, that's the Canon arbor, and that's the Minute arbor. We'll put them aside. Now for the time side train wheels, take the wire off them, put them into our foam block. First wheel, second wheel, third wheel, and the fourth wheel of course is the escape wheel, which is still sitting there. Now we'll undo the strike side wheels and have a look and see what we've got. First wheel, maintenance cam, warning wheel, and the fly. Put that up at the top. Now we'll have a look at each one of these arbors there. They look pretty rusty before and they still are a bit, so I'll get some steel wool and we'll run over these arbors quickly with a bit of steel wool, and that'll remove just about all of the markings on the arbors. Being careful of the pin there on the warning wheel, they don't damage it. You can see that's come up far cleaner now. Put it in our block. Later on we'll be looking at 3 different ways to bush clock plates. Firstly, by using a bushing machine, then manually using a reamer in a pin vise, and also using a cutting broach. Now we'll have a look at the rest of the wheels. They're all going to need some cleaning. I'll do a couple of them, then I'll do the rest offline, and then we'll come back and get into the next part. They clean up rather nicely actually. A little bit of steel wool on them, a little bit of elbow grease, it helps. There we have it, nice and clean. Oh, that's a bit rusty. Right, steel wool to the rescue. Spin it round, holding it quite tightly. And that's the end that's got that really bodgy soldering job on the lantern pinion. You can see it there. Huge slab of solder on it. Leaves in the lantern pinion look alright. Right, that's a little bit better. Right, I'll clean up the rest of the arbors offline, then we'll come back before we can start to check the pivots and bush alignments. One thing we need to do before that is we need to check the pivots and polish them. See how bad they are, whether they've got lines in them, score marks or not. So the best way to do that is to use your thumbnail and draw it across the pivot, and you'll pick up if there's a mark in it or not. That one seems to be alright. We'll go over all of these and check them out. Yep, seems to be okay. I'll check all these one at a time and see if they're okay. If that's the case, if there's no grooves in them, They'll be very easily cleaned up on the lathe. Quite a simple task. No, they don't seem to have any grooves in them. Alright, I'll get the lathe set up and we'll polish some pivots. Now, because our pivot didn't have any grooves in it, it's very easy to polish. We'll start off using an India stone, holding it down on the pivot, letting the pivot spin round on it, roll it up and down. Very low revs because we don't want to take any material off the pivot. We're just taking off any high spots that might be on it. That'll do for that. Now the next stone we use is the degusset stone, a synthetic ruby stone. We do the same, we move it up and down slowly, in behind the pivot, putting a little bit of pressure on it, not very much. If you find this video helpful, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. And that should be enough to polish this pivot. It should be nice and shiny now. We've polished the pivots. We're now ready to start testing to see how they fit into the bushings, or the lack of bushings, the holes that are being drilled into the plate, to see how many bushings we need to put into this clock movement. I'll turn the movement over to get a better view of the pivot in relation to its bushing. Get that aligned into there. That's got him. And get the pillars aligned so we can get a proper reading. There we go, that's tight there, and that one there. The first wheel on the time side is spinning very freely. Let's have a look at that pivot there. Yep, a little bit loose, and that one there on the back. Yep, I imagine that we're going to have to redo every one of these. That was the first wheel on the time side. Get our orientation. Second wheel goes there. Top plate back on again. Little bit of a bend in those posts. Not much, but just enough to stop it clicking in immediately. Right, see what we got here with our pivot. We'll move that down and across a little bit, which will get it aligned, and there we go. Fill into place. Now, align the plates, spin the wheel, spin super freely, but then we'd expect that. There's a super close-up of the second wheel pivot turning in its bushing. No, huge amount of movement there. Not too much in the back on that pivot there, but there's a huge amount on the front. Now we'll do the third wheel on the stroke side, which goes there. Top plate on. Line the posts. Sounds better. Dropped in easy there. Now we need to get that pivot into that hole there. So we'll have to raise the plate a little bit. Pair of tweezers, hold the wheel. I'll raise the plate up. Align the pivot pretty closely. Check it here. Dropped in. Okay. Align the posts. That's better. I think I'll put one of the screws into that post up there to hold it in place. Screw holding screwdriver as usual. 3 or 4 turns, not all the way. Tighten it down with a normal screwdriver. Hold the base down here so it doesn't move. See what we got in the way of movement. We'll look at that pivot there. That's actually not too bad actually. Now, turn it round. Now we're going to look at that pivot there. And I'll give it a... Yep, that's as bad as the last one we saw. Huge amount of movement there. Alright,